Today I'm joined by Zach White, who is out of the Midwestern region of the U.S. I'm here in San Diego, so it's great to have a connection back there as well. Welcome, Zach. He is the podcast host and creator of The Happy Engineer, and also the CEO and founder of a really cool, very, very specific niche coaching business called Oasis of Courage, where Zach is working with former and current engineers on a regular basis to really kind of help them, live a more happy life, get promoted more often, and really figure out how to incorporate the EQ into their IQ approach to life. So welcome, Zach.
Ken, super good to be here. And, if you want to trade places, I'd be happy to come out to San Diego for the winter. If you want to come to Michigan, that'd be fine.
Yeah, it's a good time to be out here. As a recruiter over the last 26 years, I can tell you that this time of year, from October through April, you can't imagine how many phone calls we get from leaders in the Midwest and New York and all these cold places saying, "Hey, I really can't handle another winter. Can you get me out there to Southern California?"
My wife would sign up for that plan, man. That's too funny.
Yeah, of course, then we always say, "Well, have you been out here to visit before?" And they say, "Oh, sure, yeah, I've been there on vacation." We'll say, "Well, have you really looked at the cost of living in San Diego or Southern California? It's a bit of a shocker when you come out here long term."
No doubt, no doubt. Yeah, we've got that going for us in the Midwest. It's a little bit more affordable, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Although it's funny, I keep hearing from other folks around the country around how Californians and New Yorkers are leaving their states and going to these other cities that are now growing by leaps and bounds, and now it's good if you already own a home because you're driving up the values, but it is making things a bit more crowded. So there's the pros and cons, as they say.
Mm-hmm. Makes your podcast
So
even that
I want
much
to
more
dive
important.
into our conversation. Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. Very, very true. And it's great to bring folks together from different regions, but also from different backgrounds and different functions, which is really one of the big reasons I think you and I connected so well when we first spoke, is the fact that you work so closely with engineers out there. And a lot of the recruiting that I do, some of it is technology and engineering related, but most of it is more sales and marketing and operations. And those folks stereotypically tend to have a little bit more of that EQ, if you will. We talked about more kind of the human touch to how they lead, as opposed to kind of the engineering world that stereotypically is a bit more introverted as well. And I like one of the phrases that you used, Zach, when we first spoke about how this is kind of the art and the science around leadership, right? And it's not necessarily one or the other. It's really kind of a blend.
100%. Again, anybody who is an engineer or knows one, which is most people, can relate to the stereotype that, I'm an engineer as well, and we tend to live in our intellect. We don't have a great reputation for being in touch with that human connection side. And so I think it's a unique playground for our coaching and these engineering managers and directors and people leaders in technology that we work with to help them advance in that. But it is a topic that every leader needs to understand. And I think our education system and our culture glorifies the intellect. It really builds the muscle of that IQ side way more than the EQ side. So it's a topic for everybody, but depending on your bias and personality and training, you may have different blind spots or different barriers than other folks. And engineers are certainly on the far end of that spectrum.
Very true. No, that's a good point. And I think these days, the days of, 20, 30, 40 years ago, where every division, every department in a company was much more siloed, these days it's much more of a collaborative relationship. And so the folks that were able to, the sales team, for example, stereotypically a very extroverted, outgoing, very open to talking, love networking kind of people, those folks would stay separate from the engineers, and the engineers kind of stuck to their own, and they were with that group that they were comfortable with. But nowadays, there's just so much more collaboration and internal communication that has to happen within an organization. And we see this all the time with our recruiting practice. I'm curious if you're also seeing that with the engineers that you're coaching.
1,000%. This idea that you must be able to communicate cross-functionally, that you need to get out of that silo, that your ability to influence in places where the organizational chart, the hierarchy, is not your authority. It's just you stepping in, creating, followership and aligning people to the vision and getting people to help you. Hugely important skill in any organization, whether you're in a startup or you're working in the Fortune 100. And so I think yes, we need to be able to master that. And it goes both ways. The people who are very outgoing, very, the salesperson type of personality you mentioned also needs to pay attention in how to communicate with those introverts, those engineers. It's not a one-way street. But all of it begins within yourself, Ken. I think as far as a starting point with engineers and with people we coach, and I think everybody can ask the same question, leadership begins with self-leadership. So where do I need to focus on leveling up within myself if I want to have a bigger impact in the organization, if I want to lead bigger teams or lead the enterprise, have a more strategic level of leadership, a visionary leadership? Well, what I've seen in especially company trainings, Ken, I'm sure you see this too. When you're new, you're junior in the organization, you get lots of personal development type of training, how to work on time management or how to deal with different personalities. You go through these personal development, leading yourself types of trainings. But then once you become a manager, all of your training that the company provides starts to focus on how to manage the team. It's this leading others focus. And you really work on building those skills and that acumen. And then you get promoted again and they start pulling you into more advanced strategic conversations and how to think 3 and 5 years down the road. And you start focusing on leading at that level. Well, we keep moving up and up and we forget to strengthen that foundational piece. And you can outgrow in your career your own ability to lead yourself. And EQ, emotional intelligence, is fundamentally born from knowing yourself. A self-awareness, an emotional awareness of what's going on within you before you can master influence and emotional awareness of someone else's emotions and how to then lead and create change through that. So I think that's why this is such an important topic, is the culture of company training and leadership development and leadership growth keeps moving up the hierarchy or up the ladder, so to speak, and we forget to come back and work on self-mastery and this leading me so that I can lead others.
That's very well put. And I think, my sense is that part of the issue there might also be the willingness, right, and the kind of proactive nature of those that need to have more of a focus on leading and managing themselves, right? If you're already not super comfortable with that, or putting yourself out there, or talking about areas of weakness or areas maybe you need some additional support in, then you're waiting for your superiors to come to you, and they may never do it, right? Based on what you're talking about, also. And I want to dive into kind of how you got into this specific niche and this type of coaching. But before I do that, Zach, I want to do something that I like to do with my guests also. I have this segment that I call kind of the do over and the do again. Right? Because if you're like me, there are things that I've learned along the way that I wish I had done differently. Now, they've made me who I am today, but regardless, I wish I had shown up differently. I wish I had approached a scenario or a crisis differently. And I'm curious for yourself, what comes to mind when I say, what would you like to do over, in your long career, either at Whirlpool or wherever you may have been in school? What comes to mind when I say, what would you like to do over?
Oh boy, Ken, there's so many places we could go where, knowing what I know now, I would do it differently then. And I'm sure you hear this from a lot of the amazing leaders you bring on the show, but I will start by making it clear that I would not actually redo anything in my life. I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't gone through the failures and the setbacks and the mistakes of my career and of the journey through life that I went on. So in that regard, I wouldn't change it. But if I were doing it over and I wanted to get a better outcome, the biggest thing for me is how I approached the idea of work-life balance and separating or trying to accomplish these big goals at work and then dealing with everything else in my personal life. And Ken, to be honest, I completely failed at that. I did not lead well in that way. And what happened, and it's a trap a lot of people fall into, is I was finding success at work. It felt good. I was being rewarded and recognized. And so my energy and focus kept getting pulled more and more and more into that domain. And I look back and realize my only strategy was just work harder and get smarter. And that strategy wasn't working in my marriage and in my home life and in these other areas. And so I just stopped trying over there. I figured, you know what, I'll get to that after this project is done or after my next promotion or, you know, well, you know, my wife and I are on the rocks a little bit, but it'll be okay because we love each other and it's no big deal. And I got work to do. And unfortunately for me, Ken, that led to divorce and burnout and depression and a lot of really hard, you know, super negative experiences I just would never wish on anyone. And it's because I had the wrong mindset about my whole life being so excited about my career. And so that's the biggest thing I would do over is really rethinking and, you know, thankfully have learned those lessons and now coach those lessons into the engineers that we have the privilege of serving at Oasis of Courage. But that's the biggest thing. I would definitely do life differently when it comes to this pattern that leads us toward burnout.
That's really interesting. Well, and thanks for sharing that. Also, I'm sure it's obviously it's a time in your life that was, you know, difficult to say the least, based on what you're talking about, without question. But as you said a moment ago, also it kind of brought you to where you are today. And I think we're all in that spot, right? We're all
Yeah.
again. I had this conversation with somebody, another guest, a couple of months ago, and they said, well, it's kind of that age-old question. If you could go back and talk to your younger self, what would you say? And she had a great response and comment. She said, well, I may know what I want to say to my younger self, but honestly, my younger self would not listen to me, right?
Yeah.
I didn't listen to the other adults in the room back then, so why would I listen to myself when I was in my 20s or early 30s? So you're right. It's a good point. It's, you know, there's not something that you regret or wish you would do completely over again, but there are different ways we could have shown up, if you will, if we were willing to listen. But again, that I think kind of gets back to your point earlier about training. And the need for, you know, no matter what level you're at, even if you're the CTO or CIO, right, and you're reporting directly to the board or to the CEO of the organization, there still needs to be somebody in that capacity that's looking out for your best interest longer term and is willing to invest in that training and that support and that development and the focus on, or the need to focus on, a work-life balance, and not just working 70 hours a week and giving up every other aspect of your life.
Mm-hmm. Well, and executives have known this for a long time. That's why executive coaches exist and they serve at this high level. But for those of us who are more junior, having a coach until recently was never even a thing we talked about, or it was for the underperformers to help them either catch up or potentially be graciously exited from an organization. It was almost, taboo to have a coach if you were young in your career. And I'm so glad that is turning, that people are realizing the same reason your CEO or CTO has a coach is the same reason you need one, even if you're just at that manager or middle management level, even if you're more junior, investing in yourself to prevent these failures like I just described, it's a huge asset. And, you know, take advantage of it. It's pretty awesome these resources exist now.
Yeah, it is amazing that it's much less taboo, as you said, right? It's much more of a welcome opportunity, and I think it depends upon the size company and the business acumen of the leaders at that company in terms of if they embrace that or not. You know, I've had an executive coach for the last 4 years, and I try to mention it as often as possible, either when I'm volunteering in the classroom for junior achievement, talking to, you know, juniors and seniors in high school, talking about how I have a coach, talking about the strength of other coaches out there like you and what you do for your population that you focus on with engineers, and just trying to normalize it and make it not seem like, oh, there's something wrong with Ken, so he needs a coach. Mm-hmm. Instead, it's, wow, Ken is really proactive. He sees there are areas of development that he could use some support in, and he's gone out and actually, you know, sought out and brought in a coach to help him get through that.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So then, Ken, on the redo side, you asked, like, well, what would I redo? And then what would I do again, right? What would I do again?
I'll tell you again. Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you the do again. It's an easy one for me. And we mentioned how leadership has the art and the science. And there was a point in my career at Whirlpool where I really got clear within myself that the goal I had was to move out of engineering leadership and go do a role in marketing, product and brand marketing. I really wanted to stretch myself and challenge myself outside of my core, you know, education background and get ready for higher levels of leadership in business, and I knew a role in marketing would be essential for that. And the science, if you want to use that word, told me it wasn't going to be possible. People with my background were not getting those opportunities at Whirlpool Corporation. I had no business. I didn't have an MBA. I'd done some side hustle businesses. I was always interested in entrepreneurship, but at a Fortune 500 company, I had no sort of resume-based reason why I would ever get that opportunity. So you might look at that and say the evidence is that this is not possible without some big changes. Go get your MBA or go do something else to make this happen. And the art of leadership in me said, well, there's got to be a way. Let's get creative. Let's start having the conversation with the right people to open this up. And I had the courage to go for it anyway when it made no sense. And within just 18 months of that goal becoming my priority one next step, I had a senior manager product and brand marketing role with KitchenAid brand, which is one of the most recognized brands on the planet. It was an incredible opportunity. And so I just say that as a redo or do again rather, because I think this is something that especially people who live in their intellect fall victim to is I already know what's possible. We've already created the boundaries and the limitations in our mind of what we can do and what we can't do. And I would just challenge that at every turn. Where does our mindset keep us trapped? Where are you limiting yourself because of what you think you know? And be an artist. Let's get creative. Let's see if we can paint a new picture, break down some of those barriers. And I would do that again for sure. It was an incredible role. I learned a ton, and it showed me that there was more possible in my life than just being an engineer.
I'm curious, where does that come from, right? Most engineers wouldn't, again, to your point, it's not even part of their reality. The idea that something outside of what I'm currently in is available, or that I can make that switch to a different function or different industry, whatever it might be, is not even part of the list of options out there. Did you have parents growing up that really kind of instilled creativity in you? I think your dad was an ME, right? A mechanical engineer. And
he was
I think
a
you
double
joked
E.
when we talked last.
Yeah, he was electrical.
Double E.
I was an ME. My dad was
Electrical.
a double E. I joked with you before we recorded, Ken. My form of rebellion was going into mechanical engineering instead of following my dad's footsteps into electrical. But I think the real answer to this, yes, I did have great parents, but if anything, I would say that actually created a more fixed mindset in me around you're really good at math and science, you're very smart, you'll be a great engineer, follow that path, and then get a good, stable, secure, safe job, and that's what you should do. The part of me that opened up the growth mindset, the part of me that said, hey, there's more possible for you than just this path that's been laid out before you, that was born when I went to a visioning 2-day seminar with a guy out in Ann Arbor, Michigan named Ari. And it was this 2 days talking about vision and how to create a compelling and inspiring vision for your life or for your business or for whatever. It was a very open-ended conversation on vision. And I went to this seminar, honestly, because I thought it'd help me be a better engineering leader, and I wanted to master these skills and move up the ladder. But while I was there, I got opened to this idea that there is a canvas I can paint on in life that is blank. And I get to put the brushstrokes on that vision. Who do I want to become? What do I want to do? What would light me up? What excites me? And something was born, a fire of desire, if you will, born inside me at that time to go explore beyond the road that I'd been walking on. And I really believe, Ken, that lives inside of every human being, this unique ability to use our imagination, to be creative, to paint a vision of your future that's different than maybe what your parents told you you should be or could be, or what culture or society or your company tells you is your next step. We all have that inside of us, but some of us never have it awakened, right? It just is dormant, or we don't know how to use it. We don't practice using our imagination. I mean, if anything, you look at children, they have these amazing imaginations, and then we tell them to stop using that and focus on the science, right? Don't stop pretending.
Exactly, right.
And then you grow up and you realize, oh my goodness, that ability to pretend and imagine, that's actually something that makes me, uniquely human. It's really powerful. And when you awaken that, you start to wonder, you get curious, and then you take that first step, and then you see someone else who's done it, and you're like, oh, if they can do it, I can do it. And then you go. So that's where it was born. It's not like somewhere as a child, I always knew I wanted to go into marketing. Like, no, if anything, I just believed I'd be an engineer my whole life, just like my dad. And it was
That's
that
great.
seminar that opened the door to something bigger.
Well, again, once again, kudos to you for going to that seminar with your eyes wide open and ears wide open to see what would come out of it as well. And I would imagine that when you're working with engineers, and maybe you can share a little bit about how you kind of focus on or allow for that breakthrough with the clients that you're working with, right? I remember when we were first talking, one of the things that you said that really hit home with me was that it's one thing for somebody to know the best practices about being a good leader. It's a whole other thing to actually be a good leader. And my maybe naive, mindset would say, yeah, engineers or folks that are really good at math and science, they read about the best practices. They read about the formula, the linear way to get
Exactly.
from A to B to C. But that's very different from actually doing it. So maybe talk a little bit about how you make that breakthrough with your clients.
The first thing that every engineering leader I work with goes through is an entire module of training and deep diving and coaching on our mindset. And the reason we start there, Ken, is because what you just said is 1,000% true. Your memory is the enemy of you becoming the person you need to become to lead at the next level. You see, you've been gifted with this brain and this nervous system that's capable of holding information. You have a memory, and some people have a better memory than others. Engineers typically have great memories. They read books and they consume knowledge and they remember all these ideas. But knowing something and being it are different. Having a fact or a piece of knowledge in your brain doesn't mean you're using it. It doesn't mean you're doing anything with it. I mean, most people know how to lose weight. Most people also reset a goal every January 1st to lose more weight. They're not actually using that knowledge. And in the same way, most managers, most directors, most people in these leadership roles know a thing or two about emotional intelligence or how to create a compelling vision or mission or how to deal with difficult personalities because they've read the books, they've done the trainings, they got their MBAs, and so they have this memory of it, and your memory will lie to you that because you know it, check, I got that. I know it. And it's a huge blind spot that what you know means nothing. I tell my clients from day one, knowledge is not power. Whoever told you that lied to you. Knowledge is power is not true. That's only half the story. Only knowledge that you use creates power in your life and career. Knowledge that's implemented is power. Knowledge that's applied creates power. Knowledge by itself is potential power. And engineers, we like to nerd out.
What a great way to reframe that.
Yeah, you got to change it from potential power to kinetic power, potential energy to kinetic energy. You've got to do the thing. And so we start with this mindset training because no strategy will work for them if their mindset is wrong. So that's where we start. That's what unlocks their awareness. And now we can come back. Honestly, Ken, sometimes what we coach on is exactly that stuff they already know. But they're coming back to it with that open mind and that willingness to now have the courage to act, to put it into practice. And it's amazing how fast you can get results when you actually have the awareness, the courage, the coaching, the support behind you to go and be different. I love how you said it, knowing it and being it, totally different things.
That's such a great way to frame that whole piece and that cliche that we've heard time and time again about knowledge is power. But like you said, it's like anything else. Having the information at your fingertips does not mean you're applying it or using it in the right way or at the right time. Also, as a quick reminder, I'm here with Zach White today. He is the CEO and founder of Oasis of Courage, which is an amazing coaching program for engineers. I'm curious to ask you also, when you are working with these either current leaders or aspiring leaders in the engineering world, do you talk a lot about what happens as they begin to interact with other leaders? Right, because if an engineer is starting from the place of IQ and knowledge is applied knowledge is power, to
Yeah,
rephrase what you
yeah.
just said. But many other leaders don't work from that place. How that it can be a bit of an oil and water, environment, but also interaction if they're not careful. So how do you coach leaders of engineering to interact effectively with leaders of other areas?
It's a big question, Ken, because it's always situational. And we have to be careful, especially as engineers. We like to talk in principles and theories. Here's a principle, and so it should always be true. But there's never a single dimension at play in these real life moments. And so that's why leadership is hard. That's why being a great leader requires a lot of experience and practice and willingness to fail, because it isn't just as simple as know one thing and apply it and you're good to go. But I will say this, one of the areas that's really important as you begin to master yourself, building your own, leading self, mastering emotional intelligence, you have a great set of tools around you that you can leverage and use, and you know how to use them well. And suddenly you look around and you see the gap where like nobody else is performing or thinking in the same way that I'm thinking. And what do I do with this? And the trap is that our ego wants to create a judgment against that other person. I can't believe they are not emotionally intelligent like I am. I can't believe Ken is not using crucial conversations and he's holding back in this meeting when he should be speaking up or whatever. And we don't really see it happening. It's not intentional. I really don't think very many people wake up in the morning and say, I just want to go judge everybody today and think less of them. I don't think that's a conscious thought. It's just what happens in the ego sometimes by accident is we begin to put our self on this pedestal and we look down on the people who aren't there yet. And if that happens, you're going to experience major friction and resistance and challenge in influencing and leading and communicating with others. And what's frustrating is then you don't really realize it, and they may not really realize that that's what's happening, but they feel it, right? They feel it in the tone of your voice, in the way you look at them, the way you communicate with them, the questions you ask them, how you emotionally respond to them. So to me, the thing that matters most is that we really stay humble and recognize that other leader that you're tasked to collaborate with or partner with on a project or whatever needs to happen here, they bring incredible value to this the same as you. We can't do this except together. They have something to teach me. I can't wait to learn from them. You just stay humble in that. And then build the relationship one step at a time. Everybody wants to go from no relationship to flawless, awesome, best friends, great colleagues relationship. It doesn't work like that. You got to build that bank account one deposit at a time. And so just asking yourself every time you interact, did I stay humble and did I make a deposit into the relationship? Because at the end of the day, if you'll do those two things over time, you will end up in these really high-performing teams and relationships where you can occasionally make a withdrawal or say that hard thing or ask that hard question or hold somebody accountable, and they'll respect you and they'll go with you on that. But if you're judging them, if you're putting them below you, even subconsciously, and you're not making deposits, you're just trying to make withdrawals, then it won't matter what tactic you use. You can know all the tools. You're not going to get very far as a leader.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think, one thing I've learned over, 26 years of recruiting is as a leader, you have that responsibility to make sure that the team around you, whether they're high performers or whether they're just strong, B players, which is totally fine, you got to make sure that you are allowing them and giving them that runway, that trust, and that empowerment to do what they need to do, right? We have this saying in recruiting that, people join companies and they leave managers. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact that their managers don't allow them to thrive or think outside the box truly, right? They say that, it's a cliche, but allow them to do that and bring new ideas to the table and work on themselves and have that professional and personal development. And if the leaders are not allowing for that to happen for the folks below them, then there's going to, again, be that conflict that's going to cause a lot of issue. I'm curious about one thing, and this is just something a little bit different about your background, but I'm curious if you weave this into your coaching. So I noticed in your profile that you spent several years actually teaching ballroom dancing, right? Which is, I saw that in your profile, and I thought, I mean,
Yeah.
first of all, it's super cool that you have it on your LinkedIn profile, which is great. But in terms of mindset and talking about what we're focusing on here about getting people to think outside of what they think is their limiting, environment or world, do you talk to these folks as you're coaching them about things that are completely outside of their realm of possibility, like dancing or improv?
Ballroom dance is a big part of my life. When I was at Purdue, I actually competed in ballroom and Latin dancing on our competition dance team. And then what you saw on LinkedIn, I owned a company here in Southwest Michigan teaching dance lessons once a week as a side hustle just for fun. And there was a point in time, Ken, where we were the number 3 thing to do on TripAdvisor here in St. Joseph, Michigan, behind the lake and the lighthouse here, which is pretty amazing. So
Wow.
to
Yeah,
your
I don't think most engineers are going to have that as part of their bucket list, right?
no,
To get
it's
there.
pretty
That's great.
random in a way, but I'm a dancing nerd, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So uh,
But I'm sure that opens up a lot of opportunity for you because you're looking at things, I mean, literally, but also physically from a totally different perspective and getting out of that, technical IQ comfort zone.
yeah, there's a saying in engineering and technology that all models are wrong, some are useful. And so ballroom dance is a really powerful metaphor or model for leadership and for partnership. And when you use it that way, it can be extremely powerful. Now, some of my clients, it connects with more than others. I don't force them to listen to dance stories all the time, but I absolutely love as a coach to use the world around us, whether it's nature, ballroom dancing. I ride horses. My wife and I have a horse. We like to ride horses. Using these other parts of our life to connect leadership principles is always powerful. So I'll share one with you from dance that I think is really, really interesting, and it's worthy of deep consideration as a leader in your company. In dance, there's the leader and the follower. And in traditional ballroom, it's the male in that leader role who's creating the path around the floor. The man is making the decision about where we're going to take it, what step we're going to do next. All of the decision making on where we're going to go is being made by the leader. And the woman, the follower, in this beautiful gown, she's the picture. She's the whole reason we're doing this. The guy wears a very simple black, it's not a very eye-catching outfit, and the woman wears this brilliant, colorful gown. See, while it's the man's decision on where we're going to go, the whole intent is to lift up and make known the beauty and the power and the presence of the follower. So I'm the frame, she's the picture. I'm making these decisions on where we're going to go, but it's all about making her look good. It's servant leadership in a way, where it's not about me, it's about her. And the more I can make her look amazing on the dance floor, the better we're going to score with the judges. And on top of that, I never get to tell her where we're going. All I can do is take my body to the place. And she reads the signal. So if I'm not confidently moving toward the destination myself, then she can't get there either. She'll never know where to go. And I can't just tell her and cheat and abdicate that responsibility to her to go figure it out. I must lead her there. And so I think as a leader, to just keep this picture in mind of the people on my team, the people in my department, the people that I'm responsible to lead, they need me to confidently move toward the vision, toward the goal. I also need to go there. I need to demonstrate what that's all about. And it's not about me at all. It's about how I enable them to succeed. It's about how I help them actualize and realize their goals and reach the things that they want to accomplish in their career and in their life, and how we get there together. And if we don't get there together, we lose. In dance, you can't just both go your own separate way on the dance floor. It doesn't work. And so, there's an infinite number of really fun little parallels between dance and leadership. But I think if you look in your own life and just say, what do I love? What's something I love outside of work? And just get curious. What can I learn about leadership from my hobbies, from my passions, from nature? There's a useful connection no matter where you go.
Yeah, we do an awful lot of recruiting for leaders, right? It's a big part of our practice. And sometimes our clients want somebody who's already been a leader and they want to kind of make a lateral move, if you will. Other times we focus on recruiting an up-and-comer, somebody who's ready to be a leader. One of the things that we talk about, and we have this expression of, whiff 'em versus whiff it. Whiff 'em, we've all heard about it. What's in it for me? When you're in a non-leadership role, right, it's really about you. Whether you're marketing, operations, IT, engineering, whatever, you're focused on your projects and what's going on with you. So WIFM is important. Making that transition into leadership, now, it goes from what's in it for me to what's in it for them. To your point, are they going to follow you as you're leading what you're taking your body, whatever direction you're taking it in that project, in that budget, in that innovation, whatever it might be? Are they going to follow you? You've got to focus on them and not on yourself, and that's much easier said than done. And that's why every great individual contributor is not going to be a great leader. And the challenge is finding out which one is going to be which. I want to switch gears a little bit and kind of, I guess, parallel or kind of piggyback off what we just talked about. But part of that foundation of how you lead is also your value system, right? What do you believe in? Are you a heavy communicator? Are you not? Is it hey, come see me anytime, or I only want to see you from 10 to 10:15 at our stand-up meeting every morning? That value system that you bring to your leadership and to your team subsequently is a big part of how effective you're going to be. I'm curious about your conversations, or if you dive into values when you're talking to these aspiring or current engineering leaders.
Ken, I believe, and I've seen it play out time and time and time again, that a deep understanding of your core values and the company's values can be one of the absolute most important things you'll do as a leader. In our coaching program, we spend more time on this than any engineer expects to. Some of them have resistance to it at first, like, oh, brother, here's a core values conversation. I can't believe we're doing this. Most of the time at the end of the program, when I ask what was the single most beneficial thing they did in our entire 90 days or 6 months or year together, they'll point back to this work on values. Your values create a compass, an internal compass that guides your decision-making, whether you know it or not. You may not be consciously aware of your values, and you may not even know really what I mean when I say a core value. It's not as simple as a lot of people think. Oh, there's platitudes on the wall. I value courage, or I value family. Some people think, oh, I value money, or there's a lot of things people bring beliefs into when it comes to values. It is guiding your decisions, and it's creating an emotional experience in life. When you're unhappy, when you're frustrated, when you're disappointed, it's because something in your value system just got violated. You're angry because the way that you have created the compass of your values and the rules you hold around it aren't being followed. Somebody's going against the way you want it to be and what that system is. It's the blueprint that's creating these decisions, actions, experiences, emotions, and yet most of us don't know what it is, and even fewer people have taken the time to consciously decide what it needs to be for you to become the leader, the person, the husband, the wife, the father, the mother, the fill in the blank that you want to be. And Ken, you know this as well as anybody. When people say, oh, I just don't fit in this culture, the company wasn't a good fit for me. Some people say it was toxic or it was this or that. Really what you're saying is my values and the company's values are not aligned. And we call it culture, we call it fit, but at the end of the day, that's a really important thing. And so we can blame the company all we want, but it does, again, start with you. Do you actually know what your values are? And here's the even crazier thing, Ken. You might look at the company's values and say, yeah, I have those same values. I value teamwork. I value responsibility. But the way you define the rules of what teamwork means and the way your company culture defines what teamwork means and how do we live it, what's that actually look like in the real world, could still be totally different. And so on the surface, it's like, oh yeah, we have all the same values. And then you wonder why you're constantly agitated and frustrated and don't feel like you belong. Well, it's because you live the values in a totally different way than your company lives the values. And again, we never do a deep enough dive to understand it. So I will preach the values sermon all day long, Ken. It is super important. And as a coach, I just encourage everybody, if you've not done that kind of deep dive, supported by a person who can really help you get below the surface. It's hard to do by yourself because we don't know what questions to ask. We don't know how to explore that below the hood, so to speak. Nobody teaches us that. It's a really powerful thing to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, that work has to be done as early as possible. And, when you're in your early 20s or you just come out of either undergrad or graduate school, you're not thinking about trying to lay the groundwork, right? Or set the parameters and guidelines for your lifelong professional value. And of course, no one talks about it in school at all, unless you're maybe a psychology major. But beyond that, it's really not discussed. And it should be something that should be part of your kind of a requirement to exit college. How do you think you're going to live your life? What's your value system? It'd be even a 1 credit class, right? But I just think that's so important. And I like how you framed it again, where it's not so much just the value itself, but knowing how each person is going to actually manifest and play out that value.
Right.
We all might value trust, for example, but that's going to mean different things to different people. Or maybe knowledge is important. But one of the questions I have for you around knowledge is, there's a big discussion out there right now around where does knowledge come from. You and I both might value knowledge, but me as a recruiter, I might value it more so getting that knowledge from your career, from the different jobs that you've done, your side hustles, whatever your consulting might be. You might say, hey, I value knowledge also, but your definition of knowledge is getting an undergrad degree, a master's degree, maybe a PhD. It's still knowledge for both of us, but it manifests very, very differently. Does that knowledge value, or does that kind of varied definition come up more for you these days as people are debating whether or not a formal education is as valuable as it once was?
Oh, man. Well, there's two things around this topic. And first, to your point, what's the role of knowledge in our ability to create results and be successful in our career, and how that dialogue is playing out? It's a big challenge. It's a big problem for engineering leaders who are facing a generation here in Gen Z who have a very different experience growing up and have different beliefs around this. And frankly, a lot of them say, well, what's the point of me having all that information memorized? Why do I need that certification or whatever, when I can sit here and go online and figure that out with a few tutorials and free information and AI support? And it's a legitimate argument. I mean, some of these traditional ways of learning and applying knowledge have really evolved and are evolving right before our eyes. So I don't think I have the answer, but I will say you're absolutely right. It's an important discussion. And at some level, we do have to begin as a society to address how will we decide, take engineering as an example, what it means to be an engineer. Do I need a 4-year degree and a stamp of approval from Purdue University to be qualified to step into Ford Motor Company and design shocks? Or if somebody gets all of that same knowledge for free on YouTube or by reading textbooks and doing problems and mastering the knowledge in a different way, who's to say they're not just as qualified, right? These are tough conversations. So, yeah, and I think we're in the middle of a really interesting and radical shift as the education system is facing the democratization of information. And it's no longer an advantage to have been at Purdue because the same information can be found anywhere. So who gets to put the stamp of readiness down? These are tough questions. The other side, though, Ken, is I think we confuse something like knowledge as a core value. I would argue that knowledge itself is a means, not an end. And the values that really matter in our lives and in our careers are the ends, not the means. Because what you're actually seeking is not knowledge, it's what knowledge brings you. Nobody actually wakes up in the morning and says, all I want is knowledge. Just give me knowledge. What you want is perhaps how being smart gives you a sense of significance or status in the world. Maybe you value significance. Or knowledge might enable you to connect with other intelligent people and you want to feel like you belong. And so you value a sense of connection or belonging. And so one thing I'm really intentional with my clients is to say, let's be just careful about distinguishing between the things that you want because it's a means, but to what end? Money is another great example of that. Everybody wants more money, and some people will put it on their core values list. And I'll just challenge them, say, you don't actually value money. You don't really want money. What you want is what money will bring you. What you want is the things that money can open up for you. Maybe that's freedom. Maybe that's power. There's a lot of different things underneath that, but it's not money. If you had $1 million in your bank account, but you weren't allowed to spend it and nobody was allowed to know you had it, you wouldn't care, right? So knowledge is one of those for me. So I think that's, as we're putting a bow on this idea of values, something people should ask themselves is the things I'm saying I value, is it the means or is it the end?
That's great. And I keep saying this, but I love the way that you're framing these things because I think it really it's already kind of pushed me and I think our listeners as well to think about things and to consider them through a different lens. Right. Again, to your point, knowledge in and of itself is not the goal. It's what will that knowledge bring you, whatever that might be. And there's another thing is that there's not a right or a wrong answer. It's what's right or wrong for you as an individual.
So right.
You as Zach, me as Ken, whoever your boss is, whatever the folks around you, we are each going to have our own little, ecosystem, if you will, of values and definitions around that.
I agree. That's part of what makes it hard, Ken. Yeah. You've got to make those decisions for yourself.
Right. And fun. That's fun. I mean, I can see you get a lot of joy out of having these conversations and talking to these engineering leaders about how they can, again, have a better balance, but also be able to get out and move to the next step in their career, whatever that might be. So I have one last question for you. Before I get there, though, tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you. Talk about the best way to contact you.
Yeah. Well, if any of these topics interest you and you want to go deeper on it, while the title of the podcast is The Happy Engineer, the content of these topics are for everyone. So wherever you're listening to this incredible show, as soon as we're done, just pop over and give a follow to The Happy Engineer podcast. You can find 130 plus episodes and counting, depending on when you listen to this, to get more of this. All the ways to contact me are there on the podcast as well. But if someone does want to connect with me directly, especially if you are an engineering leader and you're looking for support, then just grab your phone and shoot us a text message. We have a free coaching that we do for anybody who's curious and wants to know more about our organization. Let's call it a career growth audit. We'd love to support you and get some time with you to help you out. So grab your phone and text the word lifestyle to 55444. Just that short code, 55444, one word, lifestyle, and we'll get in touch with you with a link to grab some time. We can meet and help you out.
Thank you. I'm sure you're probably hearing from a number of our listeners just to get some follow-up and additional dives into this conversation. There's a lot of things we touched on, I realize, so I appreciate that. Okay, so my last question for you, and you mentioned this a few moments ago when you talked about kind of the radicalization of things that are happening out there. I have this phrase that I use called radical realizations. Right, things that, for example, in either my personal or more importantly, my professional life on the recruiting side as well, things that I think that are either changing dramatically in front of my eyes. Work from home comes to mind when it comes to recruiting and working in general, or things that I think we'll be talking about 2, 3, 5 years from now. So when you think about the coaching that you're doing and the engineering leaders that you're working with, any radical realizations that you are either seeing now or that you see coming down the pike in the not too distant future?
When I look at how technology is reshaping our day-to-day experience in life, some people are further ahead than others in how they've deployed it and used it, but I can see a day in the not too distant future where I'm interacting with an AI tool that supports me in my day-to-day decision-making, following accountability to my habits and the way I want to live, helping me make decisions on my calendar, taking tasks off my plate. Ken, you and I need to schedule a meeting, and I just tell my AI, hey, go figure out with Ken when we can connect and make it happen. These things are coming, and some of them are already here. And it's going to radically reshape a couple of things. One, the industry that I am in as a coach. You're going to be able to get really useful support from an AI tool. If you can ask it for help, why would you, talk to another person? And there's a lot of things that are going to be present in technology, and as a consequence, will eliminate what we perceive as the need to connect with other humans. And so for me, the thing that is a radical realization is that those things are here and coming. There will be a real pressure to use them because it will be low cost, it will be accessible, it'll be fun, it will create value. But I believe there will be a hidden cost, even more extreme than, COVID pushing us to work from home and learning to interact on Zoom. I'm talking like lots of places where you used to interact with people, you won't have to anymore. And so for me, I am doubling down on how do we create intimate, authentic human connection in real life and don't lose that skill and that ability to share and to be together. Because unfortunately, I think it's already, we're seeing it just in this work from home shift, et cetera. People are forgetting how to do that. I've got clients who really struggle with making friends, with meeting new people, because they haven't had to make a new friend in a long time, if it's not forced on, a company project or whatever. So I think that's, for me, the realization that's coming is we want to leverage this technology. It's going to be incredibly powerful, and it will help us create many positive outcomes in the world. But I'm really paying attention to what do we need to do as a society and as individual leaders to make sure that people stay healthy in connection with other people.
Yeah, humans staying relevant, right? And humans staying human and connecting with other humans. That is going to be a huge theme coming up, whether it's in coaching, whether it's in engineering, whether it's recruiting. I agree wholeheartedly. That is the theme of the next decade for sure. Well, Zach, thank you so much. I really appreciate you showing all these great insights and giving us a little bit of a glimpse into how your coaching works, but also being vulnerable and talking about kind of the do-overs and the things that we're all looking to improve on going forward. So thank you for that transparency, and thank you for sharing that with our audience today.
Ken, you're welcome. And I just appreciate the work you're doing. Such an amazing show, the way you extract insights. And if there's any way I can serve any of your audience at any point, I hope they'll reach out. It'd be an absolute honor. And same to you, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Talk to you soon.